So here's the problem with Sony cameras. If you're new or you're looking to buy a new camera or even switching from another system, you're gonna be incredibly overwhelmed by the amount of options to choose from. Like RX, ZV, A6000, A9FX, like what? Well, luckily for you, I, Jason Vong, have already went through this torment, so I can explain to you what all these confusing models and numbers mean and hopefully help you narrow down which series you should focus on when shopping for a brand new camera.
RX series.
We'll start off with the RX lineup of cameras first, and these are going to be mostly the 1-inch sensor cameras that are going to be a slight step up from your typical mobile phone quality. Now, the most common models that you might have seen are the RX 100 series, which are these tiny pocket point-and-shoot cameras. And for those of you who are in the know, yes, we'll be skipping these two series right here as they are really niche. However, the two that's worth everyone's attention are the RX 100 Mark VII and the RX 10 Mark IV because of their crazy super zoom capabilities in a relatively small body form factor. The RX 100 Mark VII has a range of 24 to 200 millimeters, whereas the RX 10 Mark IV has a range from 24 to 600 millimeters, hence the bigger body. Now both of these are high-speed cameras up to 20 to 24 frames per second bursts respectively, and both are capable of shooting 4K up to 30 frames per second. They're both great for travel, casual sports, birding, and even moon photography. Pricing for the RX 100 cameras are typically between $1,000 to $1,300 depending on the model, whereas the RX 10 Mark IV is around $1,700. With those kind of price tags for small sensor cameras, who are these exactly for? Pretty much any high-end enthusiasts and pros who are looking for a small camera body with nearly identical capabilities as their bigger setups. Now the RX 100 cameras at one point in time were marketed heavily towards the vlogging community, but many of them consider the RX 100 cameras just a little too expensive. So in 2020, Sony introduced the ZV-1, which is the start of their brand new lineup.
ZV series.
And how can you tell which are regular and which are ZV cameras? Well, their most identifiable characteristic is this mic floof on the top right here. It does help block the wind from entering the mic, and it's kinda cute. Sometimes. And you'll see throughout the video that the ZV series serve as the affordable alternatives to a lot of the different camera models, even beyond the RX series. For now, the ZV-1 is a direct copy of the RX 100, more specifically the RX 100 Mark V, but it's more video and vlog centric. In comparison, the ZV-1 has a flip out screen, the built-in mic is supposedly better, and it's a bit more beginner friendly with features like easy background blur and the product showcase buttons. It's also cheaper than the RX 100 because it doesn't have a built-in viewfinder. And you can feel it's less premium because of its plastic-ier build versus the metal magnesium alloy from the RX 100. Aside from that, I'll let you in on a little secret. Both the image and video quality are almost the same between these two cameras. And as of 2023, Sony released the ZV-1 Mark II, which is much more user-friendly because you can operate it like a smartphone camera, controlling things like colors, exposure, and focus via the touch sliders on the screen.
For an in-depth comparison, check out the links in the description box.
Alright, moving on to Sony Alpha interchangeable lens camera systems. If you ever see this symbol right here, it means Alpha.
Alpha.
And if you ever see this acronym here, the E at the end stands for E-mount. So look out for E-mount lenses when you shop for one for your camera body.
A6000 series.
Starting off with the Alpha 6000 series, or commonly known as the A6000 series, these use the APS-C Super 35 sensor. Looking at the chart once again, we are in the mid-tier category now, which is a huge step up from mobile phone qualities. Bigger sensor means we get more background blur, less noise and grains in low-light situations, and better dynamic range, which means lighting and colors are better handled in trickier situations. And this is a fantastic hybrid camera series that can do both photos and videos incredibly well. On top of that, APS-C systems are excellent if you want to build a compact lightweight setup. If you're working with great lighting and you pair it up with the right lenses, you can get the look on an APS-C camera that can rival that of a full-frame system. In fact, a lot of pros will pick up an APS-C body to pair with their full-frame camera. And the one that I can highly recommend is the Sony a6700. It's the latest model, has the most up-to-date features, with built-in in-body stabilization, and the screen flips out.
For additional resources, check out the links in the description box.
And quickly sidetracking, we have the ZV-E10, which is the affordable alternative to the A6400. Nearly everything is the same between the two cameras, except we have a flip-out screen, the built-in mic is a little better, and more beginner-friendly features like easy background blur and product showcase on the ZV-E10. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting this if you don't already own one, because the Mark II should be coming out very soon. And what I'm hoping for is that it's modeled after the current A6700, because then we would be able to save even more money. So now would be a great time to bring up the FX lineup.
FX series.
While this is not entirely true, for the sake of easy understanding, these are going to be your cinema alternatives to the main alpha cameras. And for those of you in the know, we're only going to be covering the FX3 and the FX30. So what makes these cameras cinema? Well, the truth is, the video quality is going to look largely the same, so the difference really is in the workflow. These cameras have extra screw holes around the body for better mounting attachments. They also have better exposure control for flat S-Log profiles, and a few other things that I'm not going to overwhelm you with, but if you have an interest in movie productions, the FX series are excellent to get into. I bring this up because the FX30 is the cinema alternative to the A6700. They do share a lot of similarities, but there are some notable differences, so if you want to learn more about them,
check out the links in the description box.
Before we jump into the full frame series, I just want to let you know that this helpful guide is brought to you by PPA. As a 4-year member now, PPA provides numerous benefits for professional photographers and business owners. The moment you become a member, you get $15,000 worth of gear insurance. That means you get full replacement coverage with a flat $350 deductible, or you can repair your equipment with a flat $50 deductible. Whichever Sony camera you decide to get, the insurance will be incredibly handy, especially when you're out on a job or traveling like us, taking these amazing photos. They also offer data loss, negligence, and malpractice protection with PPA's indemnification trusts. To learn more about any of this and other benefits, check out my link in the description box below, which you can also use to get $25 off your membership when you sign up. Thanks for listening. Now back to the video.
A7 series.
Alright, let's move on to the Alpha 7 series, aka A7. Full frame sensor cameras, the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop, and possibly the most confusing lineup because it spawns multiple categories. A7R, A7S, A7C, not to mention Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5. It's like Eevee from Pokemon, except instead of evolution stones, you use your credit card. Good or bad analogy? Evolve, damn you. It may not be the right analogy, but at least it's the Vong analogy. But for the sake of easy understanding, we'll start off with what I like to call the base A7 cameras. And these don't have letters between the numbers, and these are going to be one step up from your A6000 series. Like the A6000 series, these are all excellent hybrid cameras. But as you would guess, the larger sensor grants us even more background blur, even less noise and grain in low light, and even better dynamic range. On top of that, better workflow, i.e. better ergonomics, bigger grip, more custom buttons, 2 card slots, better EVF and LCD screen resolution. These are definitely geared more towards professionals, but they are considered relatively affordable in the grand scheme of things. And the two that I think that are worth looking into are the A7 III and the A7 IV if you're interested in full frame cameras.
Additional resources in the description box.
But let's move on to the letters category, the A7R and the A7S. The R in the A7R stands for resolution, which means higher megapixel counts for photography. Excellent for landscapes, architectures, and anything with fine details. Or if you're someone who enjoys cropping into your photos a lot, it would still maintain excellent amount of quality. And for your reference,
the A7 III is a 24 megapixel camera, the A7 IV is 33 megapixels, the A7R III is 42 megapixels, and both the A7R4 and 5 are 61 megapixels.
And here are the pricing difference between the A7Rs against their base counterparts.
Your relationship is at risk if you do not seek permission before purchasing these or any other camera equipment.
Now, I would only recommend the R series if you shot full frame for a while now, and you can definitely take advantage of the high resolution, either for admiring purposes or for cropping purposes. I would say go straight for the A7R5 because it is simply the best. Skip the A7R4 because it wasn't a significant update over the A7R3. And between the A7R3 and the 33 megapixel A7 IV, I go with the A7 IV just because the user experience and user interface are a lot better. Jeez, that was a lot of 3s and A7s and 4s right there, am I right? Moving on to the next letter. The S in the A7S stands for sensor, aka Sony's famous low-light sensor. Sounds like a hamburger joint. Sony's famous low-light hamburgers.
Mine's a low-light cheeseburger.
So in many people's opinion, besides the insane autofocus system, this is what puts Sony on the map for a lot of professionals, especially in the video and filmmaking community. Because this camera here can literally see into the dark. You can shoot at crazy high ISO and see significantly less noise and grain in your photos and videos compared to a lot of cameras out there. However, this tech, according to Sony, is only achievable because of the lower megapixel count. The A7S only has 12 megapixels, which I must emphasize is plenty enough for 4K videos. But for photos, there is just less room to crop before you start losing quality. But if you don't crop much, you'll be fine. So as you can see, the A7R and the A7S have two distinct areas they truly shine the most in. And luckily for us, there's only one A7S model to choose from, the Mark III for $3,500. Now, there are two alternatives that share that crazy low-light sensor that we can choose from here. The FX3 being our cinema focus camera, and the ZV-E1 being our affordable alternative. Now, unfortunately, the ZV-E1 is still way too expensive for the budget creators here, but it's a hell of a deal if you are eyeing the A7S III and the FX3. The only compromise is that the ZV-E1 has a much lower heat tolerance, so if you were shooting 4K for over 30 to 40 minutes, then it can shut off automatically to cool down. However, if you shoot intermittently up to 10 minutes at a time, you can shoot all day without worrying about overheating.
For additional resources, look in the box, Michael.
We still have one more letter to cover here, and that is C. A7C. C stands for compact, and it's easy. Think of these as full-frame sensors in APS-C bodies. Smaller counterparts with only one card slot, less custom buttons, and lower resolution in EVF and LCD screen. The A7C being a direct model off of the A7 III, A7C2 being a direct model off of the A7 IV, and A7CR being a direct model off of the A7R5. If you ever find the regular A7 bodies to be too big, but you still want that full frame look, these are what you want to consider, and I would highly recommend the A7C2. Go for the R if you have the budget. Trust me. My review?
In the description box.
We're almost done here, folks. We're almost done, okay? All right, bear with me. Two more models to go.
A9 and A1.
The only thing that you need to know about these are that they are high-speed cameras specifically for burst frame photography, used for things like competitive sports, wildlife, racing, etc. And I'm talking about F1 level here, okay? Olympic, Nat Geo level type of camera. And just to paint you a picture, the A6000 series can typically do 11 frames per second, which is plenty enough for casuals. The A7 IV can only do 10 frames per second. The A9 Mark II can do 20 frames per second, but the A9 Mark III, 120 frames per second. 120 frames per second with up to 1 second of pre-capture. This camera is already capturing the image when you're only half pressing the shutter. You wouldn't miss the exact moment the racer crosses the finish line or a bird take flight. Literally insane. On top of that, the A9 Mark III has globo shutter, which is another phenomenal technology, but we don't have time for that today, so we'll save it for another video. And finally, the A1, the flagship model. Just remember this, if you ever only see the number 1 in any of the series number, it means it is the best of the best. And truly, this does everything incredibly well. High megapixels, high speed, amazing video specs, 51 megapixel, 30 frames per second, and 8K videos. No other bodies that we talked about in this video has this kind of spec. Came out in 2021, retails for a whopping $6,500, but you know what? I highly recommend this camera if you have the budget for it, okay? If this piques your interest in any way, I beg of you to please do some extra research because it is well worth the investment. I've been shooting with the A1 for nearly 2 years. Here's a summary.
RX,
Premium compact cameras,
A6000 series,
APS-C hybrid cameras,
A7,
full frame hybrid cameras,
A9 and A1,
top tier full frame cameras,
FX,
cinema alternatives,
and ZV.
the budget alternative. Hope this video cleared it up for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Check out PPA and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.